My name is Daniel Parsons, and about a year and a half ago, in the middle of my senior year of college, I was working through, I struggled with a eating disorder, heavily rooted in an anxiety disorder, brought about by just a bunch of different factors, all kind of rooted in issues with like self-worth and self-image. Okay, so my junior year of college, backtracking a little bit, was kind of the first time I ever saw myself having really actual issues with anxiety. Up to that point in my life, from high school, things like that, I never had any real huge issues or traumatic experiences or things like that. Things had kind of coasted along pretty well. Junior year of college, I had just a bunch of different things changing. People in my life, my major, my career plans, family members that passed away, and just a lot of change, and I wasn't really well equipped to handle that change. So my junior year, I had about a 1 month stretch where I had a huge amount of anxiety, and it started to show up in my stomach. So I would get anxious, and I would throw up, and I had about a week where I just barely could get out of bed. I couldn't eat. If I did eat, I couldn't keep it down. And over the course of that month, I lost about 20 pounds in about a month or two.
Wow.
And after about the first 10 pounds, was when I actually started to realize I had a problem. So
yeah.
It wasn't even when I was throwing up or not able to eat that I felt like I had a problem. It was seeing that number of my weight dropping down quickly that I realized I was starting to have a problem. Got that under control. Fast forward senior year, and another set of a bunch of different things changing. Again, kind of career plans, people in my life, things like that. And for me, then, I started to look for something that was an area that was going to be stable and something that I could control.
Yeah.
And so while having anxiety, that was a little chaotic, but something I could control was what I was putting into my body. Well, first off, eating disorders are like what to compare it to? Yeah, it's kind of like a cancer where you can give it a label or one title.
Yeah.
Like you can say cancer, but there's different types of cancer. It impacts your body in different ways. Same thing with an eating disorder, where there's different diagnoses for those. They show up in different ways. They start for different reasons. So for one, I think it's hard for people to understand because it can't be explained in a really easy, simple answer for what they are for different people.
Right.
And for a lot of people with eating disorders, they keep them private. And so I think for the average person, if they start to notice something, they're worried about saying something because they feel like they're prodding or getting too involved in someone's life. So long answer, it made it into a short one. I think it's hard for people to relate because self-image is so relative to who you are. With guys, people assume guys are able to just brush things off emotionally rather than internalize things, which is not the case. For me, I had barely eaten anything for this. It was a week in February. I had barely eaten anything that whole week, so nothing in my system, and I had a really bad anxiety trigger one night. And for me, when I would throw up, it usually would be in twos. I'd throw up twice, and then I'd be kind of composed or contained.
Right.
On this particular night, with no food in my system, nothing to even kind of get rid of or for my body to let go of, I threw up 12 times. So really bad. And I just remember I was like sitting there on the bathroom floor, waiting for kind of it to stop and having zero control, and realizing that what I thought was having some control in my life was really just completely destroying my life and myself, and there was nothing good or healthy about what I was doing, and that I really needed help. But that was terrifying because it was just not even just outside things,
Right.
like relationships, people, time, career, outside influences that I didn't have control over.
Yeah.
That was the biggest example of there was no internal control. My body was just quite literally falling apart, and there was nothing I could do about it. And so that was terrifying, and that was a good I need help thing. The other thing about a eating disorder for me was I started to, I had a day where I realized I was taking pride in withholding food from my body.
Okay.
I would get to like lunchtime in a day, and I would look at like the food in my shelf, and I would say, I'm kind of hungry, I should probably make myself a sandwich, and I would keep myself from doing it. And I remember when I would close the cabinet shelf, and I would almost be patting myself on the back, like, that's right, like I've got control, like I can
Okay.
I can choose not to eat if I
Yeah.
want to, like I have the power. I remember I was walking on my way to class, and I took a second and kind of self-reflected, and I was like, how of all the things in my life, how is that the thing that I'm comfortable taking pride in?
Right.
I'm not taking pride in trying to better myself or trying to be healthy. I'm taking pride in killing myself, truthfully. And that was a terrifying moment as well, because that was a habit I was creating, a habit of not respecting myself or valuing myself or letting myself live and be healthy. And so that was horrifying. There was one day where the week before I had a great therapy session, and I was feeling really good, and I was like, man, I like, this is good. I think I'm really getting better, completely different than I was a month ago. And then within the next 3 days after that therapy session, I ate like one meal and threw up 4 times. And so it was like, you go from kind of that mountain up, that great feeling, right? And then it's just, crash right back down again. And so then it got to be Friday, and I was like, this has been a really bad week. I'm gonna have to sit with my therapist and say, like, it kind of all fell apart this week, and we were making some good progress, and I kind of just let it all go. And so I felt like I was letting down like myself because I had made progress, and then I let myself fall down again. I was letting down my therapist who was investing time in me. I was letting down my parents who were kind of on board with me going to therapy, and the people around me, and so I was feeling like the pressure of not meeting expectations. And then that morning I had a flat tire too, and so it was like of course, like everything's falling apart, and now even my car is not gonna let me go to therapy.
Right.
And so I drove basically, like I kind of had one of those moments of like, I remember standing, it was in front of my car, and I was like, truthfully, do I want to die or do I want to live? Like, quite honestly, that was my question for myself of, I cannot go to therapy, and I can keep going down this path of slowly killing myself from not eating and letting my body just get rid of everything good. Or I can get to therapy, get better, and kind of choose that path. And so I drove to therapy on a flat tire, 45 minutes on LA freeways, which I wouldn't recommend ever, but it was like one of the best decisions I ever made. So the breaking point was that kind of moment of getting to the car, seeing the tire flat, and through just like nothing but determination, I got myself to therapy that day, and kind of fully committed towards that. For me, back in my unhealthy place, when I would look at myself, whether it was in the mirror or just of thinking of myself, the lenses I had were all the lenses of different labels I felt like were on me. And they were all labels that I didn't feel like I fit. So first and foremost, the main label I really struggled with was masculinity. Okay. And I had gotten through high school and into my junior year of college, being given a label of masculinity that I was supposed to meet, and if I wasn't meeting that, which I felt like I wasn't, there was something wrong with me. Okay. And fast forwarding to now, when I look back, I realize a lot of those things I was projecting onto other people, those expectations weren't really there from others. I just assumed they were, and I held myself to those standards. But so I was very sensitive to labels and not meeting those labels. fast forwarding to today, a lot of the therapy process was just kind of reintroducing myself to myself.
Okay.
And meeting myself for who I was rather than who I'm supposed to be with whatever labels people give me. And again, like, I have wonderful parents, wonderful friends. I love the schools I went to and the church I grew up in. And, so I had nothing but great people around me giving me good expectations and goals. But I was identifying with the labels I felt like I was getting. Where now, after therapy and some recovery time and everything, I don't know. It's very simple, but I just look at myself as myself, and whether it's I'm looking at like clothes I would want to buy, I think I try to look at it as like, do I want to get that? And I just say, yeah, if I want to get it, I'm going to get it. I try not to think of what would someone else think about me wearing this clothes.
Okay.
These clothes. Things I would say, ways I show like love and affection to the people I care about. I just try to be more real with what I am or how I feel like I am, rather than what it would be compared to in certain labels. And so I try to give myself grace to just be myself. And it's not a perfect system, and it's not, and I don't know if anyone ever gets to be 100% great at doing that, but that's what I'm trying to do as best as I can. So first thing I would say is you're not alone, and don't be afraid to ask for help. It's something that you need to kind of work through on your own, but you can't get to that point without the help and support of other people with it too. Other thing I would want to say is not to look at yourself as having to meet the image of being a man based on what other people are telling you. Because it's so fractured depending on what you look at. Like, society will say one thing, the Christian church says another thing, family members, how you're raised says another thing on what it is to be a man, what it is to be masculine. And I think the best thing I learned for myself with going through an eating disorder and kind of watching myself waste away and trying to build up being healthy and living life again is that my masculinity wasn't tied to what anyone else told me it was. My masculinity was rooted in who I was as an individual. I just like learned to appreciate my own masculinity based on just who I was, and when I allowed myself to be myself, I was much more comfortable being myself. And I was so much happier just being myself. And when I was trying to be myself and worry about what other people thought, it was horrible. And I was never happy. I was never satisfied. And I just learned to be content in my own masculinity for what it is. Mm-hmm. And that I'm the only person who knows what that is.
Right.
Yeah. And then the last thing is just like, when it comes to like an eating disorder, you get stuck in that place of just wanting to be perfect. But whether you're a male or female or anyone going with an eating disorder you're never gonna achieve that perfection that you're striving for with whatever kind of warped view you have of what that is.
Yeah.
So you're never gonna be perfect, but what you can be is healthy and happy and alive, and that's so much better than a constant pursuit of unattainable perfection from really unhealthy practices and habits that you experience when you're in an eating disorder.